We're now. It's shown up on the.
Yeah. I know. So the other side he wants some money. So he's not stupid.
I know.
Are you bad? I'm good.
Richard, did you come in this morning?
I'm sorry.
Did you come in this morning?
Well, I live here, so I have no excuse.
Where do you live?
Wesley?
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, I'm gonna take the gavel from you.
Go ahead. You can have it. Whatever.
You're like freaking happy. I'm done with that.
How long you have been on the committee?
A year. Well, I've been on the committee for 3 years, but just chair for almost. A year.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on the, I got appointed in.
I was appointed in South Carolina. 14.
Oh, is this your second? Okay, yeah.
I told governor.
He's not gonna let you go.
I don't know. Anyway, but I have got tomorrow I cannot come because I'm on the board of MD Anderson, you know.
Oh, and how do you like it?
It's really, I mean, I like the work. It's really very rewarding work because, you know, MD.
It is almost 10:05, October 26, 2022, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Committee on Academic and Workforce. Please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast live via the internet. Before we begin, we would like to take the opportunity to welcome those who will be joining us via Zoom and ask that they observe the following etiquette. Please state your name before you speak, mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and keep background noise to a minimum. Members, when I call your name, please announce present. Donna Williams, present. Sam Torn, Vice Chair.
Present.
Richard Clemmer, via Zoom.
Present.
Thank you. Fred Frias.
Here.
Swartz via Zoom,
I'm here.
Daniel Wong,
Here.
Georgia Blackwell, our student representative.
Here.
Thank you. Please record in the minutes that we have a quorum. Agenda item 2 is consideration and possible action to adopt the minutes for the July 27th, 2022 committee meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt the July 27th, 2022 minutes of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Sam Torn. May I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Daniel Wong. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 3 is public testimony on agenda items relating to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. We do not have anyone registered to testify, so we'll go to the next item. Agenda item 4 is consideration and possible action to adopt the consent calendar. The consent calendar includes non-controversial items we think we can approve without comment or discussion. This allows us to save time for other items that need more of our attention. Highlighted items in gray are the consent items on the agenda. We are going to take up the consent calendar in 2 parts: approval of the non-rule consent items and then the rule consent items. Of course, any board member can request that the agenda item be added or removed to the consent calendar. The agenda items listed on the non-rule consent for this meeting are agenda item 5A, consideration and possible action to adopt the report to the Board of School Closures and or teach outs pursuant to Board Rules 7.76. Agenda item 5C, consideration and possible action to adopt the Professional Nursing Shortage Reduction Program report. And agenda item 5L, consideration and possible action to appoint replacement members to the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. Members, at this time, I'd like to add the following items to the non-rule consent calendar. Agenda item 5F, consideration and possible action to adopt the report on the recruitment of persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities at institutions of higher education in Texas. Agenda item 5G, consideration and possible action to adopt the report on access to higher education for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Agenda item 5H, report on activities of the Advisory Council on Post-Secondary Education for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Agenda item 5J, consideration and possible action to adopt a report on the effectiveness of the Advise Text program. Members, are there any agenda items anyone would like to add to the non-rule portion of the consent calendar? Are there any agenda items that anyone wants to remove from the non-rule portion of the consent calendar? Do I have a motion to approve the non-rule portion of the consent calendar as amended?
Motion?
I have a motion by Mr. Clemmer. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Fred Frias. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Members, the next items on the consent calendar are the rule items. The rules placed on the consent calendar are those that are either technical, conforming, or implement non-controversial policies around which there is a consensus. Agenda item 501, consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to Board Rule 130B6, 9, and 10 considering the Apply Texas Advisory Committee. Are there any rules that anyone wants to remove from the rule consent calendar? If not, do I have a motion for approval of the rule consent calendar? May I have a motion? I have a motion by Sam Torn. May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Fred Frias. Are you guys shy this morning? Hello? Good morning. Yeah, okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5A was approved on consent. Agenda item 5B is consideration and possible action related to the withdrawal of recognition for the Accrediting Council for Independent Colleges and Schools pursuant to Board Rules, Board Rules 7.6A, 2B, and 7.6B. Dr. Tina Jackson, Assistant Commissioner for Workforce Education, will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Tina Jackson, Assistant Commissioner of Workforce Education. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Agenda item VB provides history of the Accrediting Council for Independent Colleges and Schools, or ACICS. The institutional accreditor has lost U.S. Department of Education recognition, and the board is requested to approve recommendations to withdraw the coordinating board's recognition for ACICS pursuant to Board Rule 7.6A, 2B, and 7.6B. To be eligible for recognition, the institutional accreditor is required to have recognition by the Secretary of Education of the United States Department of Education. As an accredited agency authorized to accredit educational institutions that offer the associate's degree or higher, accrediting agencies must have continued recognition by the Department of Education. Loss of recognition by the Department of Education automatically results in the loss of the coordinating board recognition. Section 7.6B outlines the process which the board may withdraw recognition. Just for a little bit of history, the Accrediting Council for Independent Colleges and Schools has been recognized by the coordinating board since July 24th of 2008. ACICS first lost U.S. Department of Education accreditation in 2016. ACICS immediately filed a legal action. Because a legal action was pending, board recognition was continued through its pendency. ACICS accredited institutions were provisionally approved by both the department and the coordinating board. The education department provisionally allowed continued federal student financial aid. The coordinating board issued provisional certificates of authorization, which allowed the institutions time to find alternative accreditation. Following the lawsuit against the department, recognition of ACICS was reinstated in 2018. On August 19th, 2022, the department once again terminated ACICS federal recognition. The department found that ACICS failed to comply with federal recognition criteria, including monitoring of compliance of institutions and inadequate administrative capability. ACICS lost federal recognition on August 19th, 2022, automatically triggering the loss of the coordinating board recognition on that date. Due to the loss of recognition by the Secretary of Education of the United States Department of Education and an accrediting agency, the coordinating board staff recommends formal withdrawal of coordinating board recognition of ACICS as an institutional accreditor, which may accredit institutions located in Texas. ACICS will be of the formal withdrawal and may appeal the decision. However, the accreditor has announced that it will not appeal the Department of Education's decision and will cease accreditation operations no later than March 1st of 2024. Coordinating board staff also recommend setting provisionary period of authorization for Texas Health and Science University, which is the one Texas institution accredited by ACICS, to allow it to seek alternative institutional accreditation. I also wanted to just share with you that the Texas Health and Science University will also have accreditation for the next 18 months so that students don't lose financial aid opportunities. During that period, they will also be able to seek out additional accreditation. And this concludes my report.
Any questions for Dr. Jackson?
Yes, Madam Chair. So accreditation they have other sources that they're looking into?
They are.
Okay, so, and you've answered the question about financial aid and
Mhm.
protection for students. And there's only one health science center that's affected,
Yes,
dependent in the state?
yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and so I think it's more statutory is the reason why the coordinating board is involved in this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I just want to make sure that the students are not affected
Mhm.
because of the financial aid.
Yes,
And if they find another accreditation body, then the coordinating board would reauthorize again. Is that
that's correct. Mhm.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Mhm.
So I'm sure it's a very, very big issue for institutions because we have top institutions like the state that are top institutions, independents in the country. So I'm sure this is a high priority issue
Yes.
and their students.
Mhm.
Okay. thank you.
Definitely.
You know,
This is 18 months is sufficient amount of time. That one health institution.
Yes, I believe so. Mhm.
in addition to losing, where they possibly could lose their funding, what about graduating with a degree from an institution that's not accredited?
So there will be a teach out process so that those students will have the degree with their accreditation. And that's a process that my team will be overseeing, and definitely they'll be able to receive their degrees.
Okay.
Those students who are currently enrolled.
Any more questions for Dr. Jackson? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion for the withdrawal of recognition for the Accrediting Council for Independent Colleges and Schools, ACICS, pursuant to Board Rules 7.6A, 2B, and 7.6B? May I have a motion?
Can I have one more comment? I'm sorry. I have a question, Madam Chair, I have a question.
Mhm.
So what is the position of the ICUT, the independent colleges and universities on this? Okay. Are you familiar with, you're obviously familiar with the organization, but I'm wondering if they have a position or if they're helping the independent schools?
I'm gonna refer to council. I don't,
Or does it, I mean, I'm just kind of curious because this is like, when I first read the material last week, it was the first I heard about it. And I'm really concerned about issues that we brought up, such as, the degrees, the financial aid,
Right.
things like that. But I'm sure that their organization is looking into that as well. Like that. What's that?
So,
do we know?
so generally the independent colleges and universities that have the same accreditor as our public institutions. So they generally be accredited by SAC. So, I'm
Right.
sure that, in general, everybody keeps an eye on these issues about regional accreditation. And, there have been a lot of changes over the last few years, but, this is a rare occurrence that
Yeah.
would come up with somebody.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, this is kind of unusual, but I'm sure they're working on making sure there's a smooth transition and a good option.
definitely.
Okay, good. No, thank you.
Okay, I believe I had a motion by Sam Torn. May I have
Emma Schwartz.
a second by Emma? Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item 5C was approved on consent. Agenda item 5D is consideration and possible action to adopt the transfer report 2022. Ms. Elizabeth Mayer, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Good morning, Ms. Mayer.
Good morning. Good to see you all today. My name is Elizabeth Mayer, and I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs. So the transfer report for 2022. So the General Appropriations Act directs the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to submit an annual report that presents the goals and practices of Texas public general academic institutions to improve the transfer experience. The legislative directive requires public universities to provide information about institutional transfer practices and goals to the coordinating board on an annual basis. So I'm just going to highlight some of the findings from that report. So Texas 37 public universities completed a detailed survey that shows new approaches and emerging efforts related to improving the transfer experience. Orientation experiences acclimated transfer students to their new institutions and were used at most public universities, with 100% offering transfer orientation and many continuing to add to the number of activities and kinds of services introduced to transfer students. Academic advising is often one of the services provided during orientation, and although it occurs at other times as well. Most universities, 92%, require new transfer students to receive advising. The most common outreach efforts reported by the institutions include regular recruitment visits to college campuses, transfer fairs on college campuses, and university campus preview days for all prospective students. More than half of the community college students transferring to a public university in 2021 enrolled at one of the state's 8 emerging research institutions. So either Texas State University, the University of Texas at Arlington, the University of Texas at Dallas, the University of Texas at El Paso, the University of Texas at San Antonio, Texas Tech University, the University of Houston, or the University of North Texas. The statewide 4-year completion rate for community college transfer students in the junior cohort of the report study was 68%, compared with 86% of non-transfer students. The time to degree for community college transfer students in the junior cohort was 7.4 years, compared to 5.3 for non-transfer students. The time to degree for the 2-year for the 2 groups within the cohort is consistent with the time to degree of previous years. The overall statewide performance of non-transfer students included in the 2017 cohort group of juniors continued the slight upward trend for completion rates over the past 3 years. The performance of transfer students in the latest cohort demonstrated just over the same completion rate as the previous year, while the non-transfer student completion rate is the same as last year. So as we've discussed and provided to you all, the requirements of SB 25, the coordinating board has completed that implementation. And we're also, as we've been updating you, working on the Texas Transfer Framework and the new Texas Transfer Advisory Committee that has been established through the adoption of the rules in March of 2021, all which provide more momentum for improvements to come with transfer students. And collaboration and commitment among institutions and clarity and messages to students about degree completion are going to be key elements in order to improve transfer moving forward. That concludes my remarks.
Any questions for Ms. Mayer? I have one. Once we complete the report and say it's approved, then what?
It goes to the legislature.
All right. All right, no questions. Do I have a motion to adopt the transfer report for 2022?
So move.
I have a motion by Daniel Wong. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Richard Clemmer. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5E is consideration and possible action to adopt the graduate medical education report. Ms. Elizabeth Mayer, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will be available to answer questions.
So I'm going to provide a brief overview of this report. So it's the Graduate Medical Education Report and Assessment of Opportunities for Graduates of Texas Medical Schools to enter residency programs in Texas. Next slide. So this report is required to be completed every other year and presents the following information. So it's a comparison of the first year graduate medical school education positions available annually with the number of medical school graduates, a statistical analysis of recent trends in and projections of the number of medical school graduates and first year graduate medical education positions in the state, methods and strategies for achieving the ratio for the number of first year graduate medical education positions relative to the number of medical school graduates in the state of at least a 1.1 to 1 ratio, an evaluation of current and projected physician workforce needs in the state by total number and by specialty for the development of additional first year graduate medical education positions, and an examination of whether the state should ensure that a first year graduate medical education position is created for each new medical student position established by a medical or dental unit. And then, so I'm just going to provide some highlights of this report. Next slide. So the Texas physician workforce includes physicians educated and trained in the state, as well as physicians educated in other states or countries. The latter group comes to Texas either continue their training in a Texas GME program or to join or establish a medical practice. Texas continues to be an appealing location for physicians to practice. For the last decade, the physician workforce has expanded to at an unparalleled pace. From 2010 to 2020, the number of patient care physicians actively practicing in Texas increased 38%, which you can see on the slide. Next slide. Now I'm just going to spend some time talking about the pipeline for students starting at a medical school through their residency training. At the time of this report, Texas has 16 medical schools that offer a doctor of medicine or a doctor of osteopathic medicine degrees. This figure illustrates first-year enrollments at both private and public Texas medical schools from 2016 to 2021. During this time, there was a 22% increase in enrollments. Just as for context, in 2006, the American Association of Medical Colleges asked its member institutions to increase medical school enrollments by 30% from the 2002 enrollment levels. Texas responded to this request by increasing enrollment 73% during the period between 2002 and 2021. The increase in entering medical students reflects both the total increased enrollments at all medical schools and the opening of new medical schools. Next slide. Between 2012 and 2021, Texas medical schools experienced a 35% increase in graduates. Although there was a decline in 2017, a continued rise from 2018 through 2021 reflects the expansion of first-year entering medical school enrollments and the establishment of new medical schools. Texas medical schools continue to have a high rate of graduation, with 96% of the first-year entering class of 2017 graduating in 2021. Next slide. So this is what we call the opportunity slide. So the opportunity for a Texas medical school graduate to enter a Texas residency program is limited to the number of residency positions that accept first-year residents. First-year residency positions are available in some, but not all medical specialties. The number of first-year filled residency positions varies from year to year and depends largely on sponsoring institutions having adequate resources to educate, train, supervise, and pay for residents for the entire length of the program. The figure represents where we are in terms of achieving the goal of a 1.1 to 1 ratio of GME first-year residency positions to medical school graduates. Achieving the goal of a 1.1 first-year entering residency positions for each medical school graduate will allow every Texas medical graduate an opportunity to remain in the state for their residency training and will allow graduates from other states an opportunity to enter a Texas residency program. Without the funding to grow the number of first-year residency positions, Texas medical school graduates will be forced to leave the state and are less likely to return to Texas to practice. The degrees awarded on this slide are in yellow, and the dotted line in yellow are the projections, and they're based upon actual medical enrollments numbers. The number of first-year residency positions are projected in blue and are based on what was reported to the coordinating board for 2021, and on the filled positions data we could find for the independent programs. Projections for 2023 through 2026 does include positions we expect to be created with the GME expansion funding in 2022 and 2023. And that red line is showing the opportunity to meet the 1.1-to-1 ratio. So based upon the growth of medical school graduates and the number of projected first-year positions, beginning in 24-25, the goal will not be met if new first-year residency positions are not created. That concludes my remarks for this report.
And those are created by?
They're created by the residency programs and new residency programs that are created. So they can add positions, but they can also add new residency programs. So right now, with the significant number of medical schools that we've added and the increase in graduates by 2024, 25, if we don't have more residency programs created or more positions added, then we're not going to meet that ratio. So students or medical school graduates would potentially leave the state.
So Madam Chair, as you know, you've been on the board a while like I have. We've approved, since I've been on the board, 3 new medical schools. I visited one recently. Their pass rate on their third-year class was 97%.
Yes.
That was really impressive.
Yes.
But
Medical school students complete.
that's true. That statistic, I agree with. The question becomes then, when they come before proposals for us, they project
Correct.
having residency programs.
Correct.
It's become a very, Commissioner, I discussed this because we get calls on this. It's become a very competitive environment. It's a nice way of saying it. And there's a lot of folks that are trying to set up residencies. And again, going back to the quality of the residency.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, could you put your microphone on, please, sir?
Thank you. Again, going back to the quality of the residency programs and the institutions, hospitals, businesses that are involved in this. It's very important, again, for us to monitor and to have exactly what you said, Elizabeth, is to have the quality and make sure that our graduates from our state are having opportunities first. And then, being able to fulfill those needs, because you're right about between 72, 74% of the students that do the residencies in that area stay in that area, and they stay in Texas. So, as far as our state continues to grow in population, so this is a very area that we get a lot of questions on. It's very important that the coordinating board is very involved in this because of the fact that we need to be able to make sure that the graduate medical education opportunities are there.
Yes. And it's very expensive for those programs to run those residency programs.
It's expensive. You're exactly right. And so budgeting, and as we look at decisions and funding for these programs in the future that's entrusted to this board, we need to look at all that very carefully. So thank you for this report. I mean, the trends are going very well. They really are. But as we continue to grow, have more students, is something that we really need to keep an eye on. And thank you for you and your group for doing that for us.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, in that regard, it might be beneficial at some future meeting to ask some of these medical schools to come in and kind of report to the board on their degree of difficulty on creating or finding Texas residency slots, just to kind of see what their experience is. And my is a request. And second, does the state still pays for half of the residency costs? Is that a match after the fact, where that the state will contribute half of the cost to the hospitals for the programs?
So the residency programs receive, there's residency funding, so they receive formula funding. And then certain programs are also receiving the Graduate Medical Education Expansion Grant funds. I believe that's $75,000 per resident. So there is funding, but from my understanding, particularly some of the specialties, I think are very expensive because they are paying for those students a salary, and then all of the other costs that are involved with the residency programs. I just think it's a very expensive endeavor for the hospitals.
It is, and that's correct. And Mr. Wilson, to your point is, yeah, we can look at that opportunity, but I will let you know that the commissioner and I keep very close tabs on that. And as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I visited a school recently. I got invited by the chancellor and the president and the dean of that medical school, but the commissioner and I tune in, and we've done several Zoom calls checking in with these schools. So we're on top of it. Let me tell you the things that I think what we have done is we want to go back and to make sure as we make decisions as a board that people are following what they said they were going to do. But more importantly, number two, to check in. We want people to be successful, and we want to check in and want to make sure that the medical programs and the residency programs are doing well, and how we can work with the legislature in order to help funding. Funding is a huge issue with setting up these residencies. And Elizabeth Mayer is exactly right. It's very expensive, and some of them, particular ones, are more expensive and require more attention. And quite frankly, that's something that the state is looking at, and that the coordinating board is working closely with them. So yeah, that's a good question. In the past, Mr. Wilson, we've had people come in from institutions and medical centers, and I just think that we've had so much going on recently. The community college, important thing that we're working on that the commissioner is sitting on for us, and the outcomes based and things like that. So that's something we've done in the past, and we can revisit and maybe do again. But we just had a lot on our plate with building a talent strong Texas 60 by 30. We just had a lot of policy issues that have come up, but that's a good suggestion. We've done it before, and there's no reason why we can't, but we haven't stopped doing it. Like I said, I've visited a couple schools already, and by Zoom, several, almost the majority of the medical schools, because this is a big issue. We have shortages, as we all know, in nursing, teachers, physicians. So we have a lot of shortages in higher education in our state, but we're trying to address as much as we can as we go along.
Thank you.
Is there a certain rule that a percentage of these first year like medical students have to be Texas residents or Texas graduates in these residencies?
Not that I am aware of. I think that is at the discretion of the residency program.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's very competitive. Obviously, certain specialties you have to interview for them, and but it's very different now. Clerkships, I was visiting a hospital recently. I don't know if I've told you, but there was a couple of really sharp student doctors, third-year clerkships, and they weren't from a U.S. school.
Yeah.
So clerkships are different than residencies. First, we got to realize that, right? Clerkships in the third and fourth year, medical students training, and then the residencies, what we're talking about, is totally different. That's after you're actually got your MD degree or your DO degree.
Correct.
But yeah, so that's a good question. It's pretty well left up to the institutions as far as their requirements and who they select in a very competitive process.
Yeah, my only thought is with the legislative session coming up, is there any insight we can gain where we might provide recommendations to the legislature regarding variable type funding or just whatever? I remember it used to cost $150,000 per year per student, and that's old information. So I'm sure that's now even a lot more expensive to the hospitals.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, obviously, it's always on the legislative budget. Requests from the health science centers, the universities, the medical schools, and you're right, it varies, Mr. Wilson. So that's always funding is always an issue, and that'll go before the appropriations committee, this room we're in now, coming up starting January.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt the graduate medical education report? May I have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Fred Frias, seconded by Sam Torren. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5F through 5H were approved on consent. Agenda item 5I is a report on activities of the Applied Texas Advisory Committee. The TACT, do you say that, ATAC co-chair? Dr. Chantel Blake, Associate Dean of Enrollment Services Registrar, Dallas College, will provide a summary of committee activities and will be available to answer questions via Zoom. Hi, Dr. Blake.
Good morning. How is everyone today?
Thanks.
Good morning.
Beautiful Texas day. Well, my name is Dr. Chantel Blake, and I actually serve as Associate Dean for Admissions at Dallas College. I'm here this morning to provide the board an annual report from the Applied Texas Advisory Committee. For those that may be new to us, the purpose of the Applied Texas Advisory Committee, or ATAC, is to discuss and vote on changes that may be needed to the Applied Texas applications for the upcoming college admissions application cycle. Also to address additional initiatives to strengthen student participation and access into higher education. Committee tasks may include technical and functional revisions to the common admissions application for the Applied Texas system, development of training materials for the users of various components of the Applied Texas system, recommendations on admissions policy, and other activities necessary for the maintenance of the Applied Texas system. I had the honor of serving the committee as Community, State, and Technical Co-Chair alongside the University Co-Chair, Dr. Jamie Hansard, Vice President for Enrollment Management, Texas Tech University. Both of our terms ended on May 2022. This report will cover activities from September 2021 through August 2022. The committee met 3 times, October 26, 2021, February the 2nd, 2022, and May 11th, 2022. The committee costs for fiscal year 2022 were estimated at $10,800. This estimate includes travel and lodging and staff time. Institutions commit to providing travel expenses for members. Now I'll provide a high-level overview of the summary of tasks completed by the committee, which focused on improvements and modernization of the application. The following changes to the application and work of the Applied Texas Planning and Assessment subcommittees included data was moved to the cloud hosted by Amazon Web Services, new application administrative and counselor suite. All applications are now mobile friendly, a new help desk issue ticketing system, and expanded administrative functions. The committee also approved submitted change requests. The committee reviewed change requests from participating institutions and discussed recommendations, voted on, and submitted prioritized to the technical team for implementation. All changes were made to improve the accuracy and flow of data from applicants to their desired institutions. These changes help students avoid errors that may delay their admissions. A few of the changes were that a question that would allow students applying to public two-year colleges to self-identify in one of the Perkins special populations, expanding the options of the parent information to all applicant types, expanded address verification, and expanded information for entry for high school senior courses. The committee also established Applied Texas subcommittees. The ATAC established 4 subcommittees to focus on additional priorities to improve the Applied Texas system. Each subcommittee met and reported recommendations back to the advisory committee. These subcommittees included the Communications Subcommittee, led by Andy Benoit. The purpose of the subcommittee was to create and implement a communication plan for stakeholders, including higher education institutions, counselors, and other users. A K-12 collaboration subcommittee led by Jennifer Beal. The purpose of the subcommittee was to collaborate with high school representatives and authorize users to advise on the counselor suite and Applied Texas application. A residency logic subcommittee led by Amy Williams. The purpose of this subcommittee was to review the logic of the residency questions on the Applied Texas application. And lastly, the strategic planning subcommittee led by Miguel Woloski. The purpose of that subcommittee was to discuss, plan, and implement long-term strategic changes to the Apply Texas application. Finally, the Apply Texas state application conducted a webinar. On June 14th, 2022, the ATAC and Apply Texas team hosted a webinar to provide a year-end review of improvements and changes made to the Apply Texas system, and also provided an update from the Apply Texas Advisory Committee, Strategic Planning Committee, and an update on the future of Apply Texas. The event was designed for both Apply Texas application administrators, who were charged with the setup, programming, and maintenance of the Apply Texas application, and for functional users, including the recruitment teams and admission staffs. The webinar was recorded and shared with over 400 registrants for later viewing. The presentation also provided the Apply Texas staff was also provided by the Apply Texas staff at the Summer TACRO meeting on July 12, 2022. This concludes my remarks.
Thank you. You guys did a lot of work.
Good work.
Members, this is an informational item only. I forgot to mention that before I introduced Dr. Blake. But are there any questions for Dr. Blake? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be with you today. Bye-bye.
Agenda item 5J was approved on consent. Agenda item 5K is consideration and possible action to adopt the request to extend the current contract with the vendor for the virtual advising project, ADVI. Molly Gully, Senior Director of Advising Strategy, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Molly Gully, and I serve as the Senior Director of Advising Strategy. And I'm here to discuss our request for approval to award up to $900,000 to continue the contract with Mainstay for implementation of ADVI, our virtual chatbot. So as a reminder, ADVI, our virtual chatbot, is powered by AI and a team of highly trained, highly trained college and career advisors. ADVI helps Texans get answers to questions about attending college, returning to college, financial aid, and much more. The chatbot responds to students' questions via text messages or online chat, drawing from a growing database of thousands of questions. And when an individual's questions cannot be answered by the chatbot, they're routed to our team of highly trained advisors to respond. ADVI has served over 550,000 students since 2020, and just this year we have served 245,000 students, which includes students from the class of 2022, and individuals with some college credit but no credentials. So I'd like to share a few of the messages that we received from ADVI during our Goodbye campaign to the class of 2022. Remember, these are text messages from our users. Y'all are the best, heart emoji. Y'all have helped me immensely as a first-generation college student. I will forever, I started college last week and I love it. Heart emoji, heart emoji, heart emoji. I will forever keep the growth mindset I gained this year. Thank you for all you have done and the things you have provided and showed me. Thank you so much for all the help. It's been great. And thanks to the team behind this service. I'm attending UT Dallas for biomedical engineering, and with your suggestions, I was able to have a good time applying, moving in, and starting classes. So ADVI meets students where they are. And while it'll never be a replacement for the school counselors, texting communication does allow students to let their guard down and ask the questions that they may be too embarrassed or too nervous to ask with a trusted educator. TAGCB staff request approval to expend additional funds for a third year of implementation and enhancement of the virtual advising project. Continuation of the AdmitHub Inc. Mainstay contract will enable the class of 2023 to receive support through their senior year of high school and will allow the project to expand to support additional populations, including 50,000 high school juniors and more than 25,000 individuals who have some college but no credential. Lastly, plans are in place for leveraging ADV in new initiatives like My Texas Future and expanding initiatives like Advise Texas, so that individuals, no matter whether they're seniors in high school, can benefit from the services of ADV. Thank you.
I have a comment real quick. I have a comment. So, like Commissioner Sun can get on and ask him questions, but how would the folks be able to get to know about ADV?
So ADV is made available and made known to all individuals who use Apply Texas. So there's the option when they're in Apply Texas to opt into the text message campaigns. And then through our Texas On-Course resources, we also have educators across the state of Texas who promote ADV to their students in high schools.
Okay, yeah, because I'm thinking about like when you're a junior or haven't applied Texas yet, to ask those type of questions before they start to apply. So you do that by counselors?
Yes, it's mainly pushed through our relationships with our school counselors across the state who have their students opt into the text messaging.
Is there any other ways that we could do that? Because, you know, we hear the numbers about counselors are overworked per students, you know, in high school, junior high, but I'm just thinking about, are we reaching? I mean, those are great numbers, by the way.
So
They're
that's
outstanding.
that's a great segue, Mr. Chairman. So Molly alluded to the, you know, when we this year as we're rolling out our one-stop My Texas Future advising resource. So we'll have one place that we're driving traffic for students to explore the available options, start to develop a plan, explore different programs that might be available, get connected to programs. That's where we'll put the new Apply Texas. That's where we'll put our scholarship application. So there's one place that we drive traffic. And so folks will go ahead and register, create a profile, share their contact information with us right there so that we can go ahead and start texting with them. So already I want to commend our advising team. So this is, I think, the largest implementation of artificial intelligence chatbot for college and career advising of any state. It's and that's before we've incorporated ADV into our one-stop implementation. It does intersect with what we're doing with Advise Texas, where there's a cohort of virtual advisors that help with escalations. I chat with ADV every now and then just to kind of see what kinds of responses are coming back. Honestly,
I may want to.
And we do and we do get the data back, so we're able to see what those interactions are like, and then we can use that as a platform to drive further improvement. So this is an area where Texas is already a leader, and we're set up for a dramatic expansion. So the board's support for the request would help us extend our reach to other populations, so that not just the secondary students, but folks with some college no credential, potential transfer students from community colleges would be able to get those kind of just-in-time answers to questions. This is especially where they get response. We get a lot of questions that relate to financial aid. And those will, but these will come in the middle of the night where folks are trying to figure out, like, you know, my parents are separated and I can't get my dad's tax return. So how do I fill this out on the FAFSA, or what can I do? And we can provide them an answer right away. Or if they have a more complex question, within 24 hours, we can get them back a customized response from one of our advisors.
Yeah, I think so good. But I guess I'm trying to say or think about a student who's getting ready to think about going to college, how do they do the process, who lives in rural Texas, you know, who may not have the resources to be able to, you know, to get to a counselor very easily. So I think this is.
We do have a partnership with the Rural Student Success Initiative.
Oh,
and so we are partnering with different organizations to also get the word out around this.
That's great. Good
Spread
job.
the word.
Keep it up. It's great.
Any additional questions? Comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to request to extend the current contract with the vendor for the virtual advising project ADV? May I have a motion?
I'll move.
Have a motion by Sam Torn and a second by Emma Schwartz. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5L was approved on consent. Agenda item 5M is consideration and possible action to approve the following requests for new degree programs. Members, in consideration of our time limits today, we have the items presented by Ms. Mayor, and the institutional representatives will be available to testify tomorrow. Ms. Mayor?
Do we want to start with,
I guess I need to start with agenda item M1. Duh. It's consideration and possible action to approve the request from Angelo State University for a Doctor of Education in Transformative Leadership. Now, Ms. Mayor.
yes, ma'am. So Angelo State University is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Education degree in Transformative Leadership. The proposed online program would require 60 semester credit hours beyond a master's degree beginning in spring of 2023. The proposed program would focus on organizational leadership and is designed for working professionals interested in pursuing high-level leadership and management positions within their field. Professionals pursuing this type of EDD program would come from diverse backgrounds, including K-20 administration, nonprofits, human resources, corporate training and development, education consulting, healthcare, and government. Angelo State anticipates the majority of students would continue working while enrolled in the program and would pursue leadership roles within their organization following graduation. Data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and Texas Workforce Commission show growth in leadership and management positions across a variety of fields, creating an average of 9,829 job openings in Texas annually over the next 10 years. That concludes my remarks.
All right, members, any questions for Ms. Mayor? I have one. Will the program be on-site, total on-site, or will it be a hybrid with online?
So it looks like it's, I think, 100% online.
100% online?
Yes, yes, I got a thumbs up from my team. Yes.
All right, any other questions or comments?
I didn't quite understand what transformative leadership is as opposed to leadership.
I do not have the details of that, but as I understand, I think it is probably similar to a leadership, but transformative leadership, it might be more focused on like change, culture, and things like that, and facilitating organizations as they're going through change.
Okay.
But you can add the representative from the institution will likely provide a more thoughtful response tomorrow. Apologies, Mr. Torn.
I just didn't know if I was missing something in my own personal resume.
All right, any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to request from Angelo State University for a Doctor of Education in Transformative Leadership? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion by Daniel Wong. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Sam Torn. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I
Sure.
want to make sure the board understands that this committee, obviously, we're going to have an opportunity to ask questions. That this is just a recommend. Sam brought up a good point, Mr. Torn did. Some questions that we have. This is making recommendation to the board when we do the presentation, then we'll ask questions, and then the board will make the final decision in terms of the program approving or not.
Yes, this is
Wanted to
moving it
clarify.
from the committee to the
Right.
board.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
right, just wanted to make sure. So we will have ample opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, we would not deny you guys the opportunity to ask questions. Okay. All right, agenda item 5M2 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from Navarro College for a Bachelor's of Science, an RN to BSN in nursing. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions as well.
Navarro College is seeking approval to offer a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree completion program for registered nurses beginning in fall 2023. Navarro currently offers an associate's degree in nursing, or ADN. The associate degree in nursing is the minimum education requirement for RN licensure, registered nurse licensure. The proposed hybrid online program would build on the 60 semester credit hour associate degree curriculum, requiring 27 additional semester credit hours of core curriculum coursework and 33 semester credit hours of upper division nursing coursework for a total of 120 semester credit hours. Workforce data suggests there's a growing need for registered nurses. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the employment rate for registered nurses is expected to grow at a greater rate than the average for all occupations. The Texas Workforce Commission expects the state employment rate for registered nurses to grow at a faster rate than the average for all occupations. Although an associate's degree in nursing is the minimum education requirement for RN licensure, there has been a national effort to increase the number of registered nurses with a baccalaureate degrees. The proposed hybrid online RN to BSN program would provide an opportunity for registered nurses to advance their education and nursing skills, improving patient care. In accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, Navarro will hire 2 additional core faculty members in 2022. The institution will also seek accreditation for its RN to BSN program from the Accreditation Commission for Education and Nursing. And the Texas Board of Nursing has approved Navarro's RN to BSN program already on June 21st of this year.
Members, any questions for Ms. Mayer? None. Do I have a motion to request? Do I have a motion to approve the request from Navarro College for a Bachelor's of Science, an RN to BSN in nursing? May I have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion by Sam Torn and a second by Daniel Wong. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5M3 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas at El Paso for a Doctor of Philosophy in Psychology. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
It's a PhD in sociology.
Why do I say that every single time? We did that in practice.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry.
It's okay.
I am so sorry. Elizabeth Mayer will
Yes,
present
ma'am.
this item.
The University of Texas at El Paso is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Philosophy degree in sociology. The proposed program would draw on the university's location along the U.S.-Mexico border to offer a transnational perspective on 3 areas of study: borders and mobility, culture and health, and environment and society. The proposed face-to-face program would require 61 semester credit hours beyond a bachelor's degree beginning in the fall of 2023. The proposed program would prepare students for work as sociologists and post-secondary faculty. An analysis of workforce demand shows an increased need for sociologists and sociology faculty over the next 10 years. The Bureau of Labor Statistics projects the U.S. will see a 4.8% increase in sociologist positions and a 7.6% increase in sociology faculty positions. The workforce projections for Texas show even greater growth, with a 9% increase in sociologist positions and a 10% increase in sociology faculty positions.
Members, any questions for Ms. Mayer? If not, do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at El Paso for a Doctor of Philosophy in Sociology?
I'm happy to approve that.
May I have a motion?
Emma will move.
I have a motion by Emma Swartz. May I have a second? I'll second. I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5M4 is the consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas at Permian Basin for a Bachelor's of Science, a BS in Civil Engineering. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
The University of Texas Permian Basin is proposing a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. The proposed face-to-face program would train students in the 4 foundational areas of civil engineering: structural and construction, transportation, geotechnical, and water and environmental. The proposed program would require 126 semester credit hours, which is necessary to meet ABET requirements. There would be 74 semester credit hours of required courses and 10 semester credit hours of electives beyond the general core curriculum. The proposed program would be offered face-to-face to students in Odessa. Job market demand appears strong. For the decade 2020 to 2030, the Texas Workforce Commission anticipates 26,701 annual job openings for civil engineering managers in the state. For the Permian Basin area, TWC anticipates 658 annual job openings in civil engineering managers. According to TWC's estimates, Texas public institutions are producing a shortage of 1,600 fewer graduates than available positions for civil engineering that require a bachelor's degree. UTPB has a co-enrollment partnership with Midland College that would also support the program. That concludes my remarks.
Members, any questions for Ms. Mayer? If not, do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at Permian Basin for a Bachelor's of Science, a BS in Civil Engineering? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Fred Frias. And may I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Emma Swartz. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5M5 is the consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas at Tyler for a Bachelor's of Science, a BS in Construction Engineering. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available for questions as well.
The University of Texas at Tyler is proposing a Bachelor of Science in Construction Engineering. The proposed face-to-face program would be offered at UT Tyler's main campus in Tyler and would offer students an additional option for pursuing an engineering degree. UT Tyler states there is a need for construction engineers in the region of Tyler, Texas. There's also a need in the East Texas region. Currently, the closest public institution that offers a construction engineering program is at Texas A&M University Commerce, which is 86 miles from UT Tyler. The proposed construction engineering program would operate among the existing civil engineering and construction management programs, with the majority of the proposed program coursework being taught on the Tyler campus. The proposed program would be housed in the Department of Construction Engineering and Management and would consist of 128 semester credit hours. In accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, UT Tyler would hire 1 new core faculty member in year 1. The institution will also seek for its ABET accreditation for its BS degree program. Concludes my remarks.
Members, any questions?
I just have a comment. Like bachelor's programs for engineering are before us all the time.
Yes.
The history of that, I know that we're working on some of this, right, Commissioner? It seems like usually brought to the board or master's or doctorate programs. But for the history of the new board members, can you give us a little bit of background, either Ms. Mayer or the commissioner? And what we're working on now? We can discuss that.
So that'll be just in a few minutes.
Yes,
We'll
sir.
we'll take
Yes,
that,
sir.
take that up. It's a great preview of for arbitrary and contingent, but though I'm sure very good reasons. The all of the engineering programs had to come up to the full board. So that would be among the things that we would discuss. Yeah, about potential new processes for program approval.
Okay, thank you.
And we really need a lot of engineers. We really do.
We got to watch the ability, right?
I don't know. At Intercontinental Airport, we'll just take you. We need you badly. All right. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at Tyler for a Bachelor's of Science, a BS in Construction Engineering? I have a motion made by Sam Torn. May I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Fred Prius. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Okay, next I have on my list is agenda item 5N is lunch. But we're moving so quickly through the agenda, we're not going to break at this time. So agenda item 5O are the proposed rules. Agenda item 501 was approved on consent. Agenda item 5.2 is consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments, board rules 4.23 through 4.233, 4.236, and 4.237 concerning Open Educational Resources Grant. Dr. Michelle Singh, Assistant Commissioner for Digital Learning, will be available to answer questions and present this item.
Madam Chair, so just before Michelle makes her remarks on this, if I could jump in just for a second, just to kind of brag on Michelle and her team just a little bit. So there's an organization called Open Education Global, which is an international not-for-profit organization that supports open educational resources, policy, data around the world. It's composed of leading colleges and universities and other organizations, government initiatives around the world. So for 2022, their Open Policy Award went to our OER Texas initiative for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. So just wanted to call that out. We're very, very proud of Michelle and her team, and as formally a recognized global leader in open educational resources. So for some context for this this discussion.
Awesome.
Give her a raise.
Very good question, sir. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner, for that. And thank you all so much. It's very humbling and definitely kudos to the team that is also in the audience. So wonderful on that. Good morning to everyone once again. I am Michelle Singh. As mentioned, I serve as the Assistant Commissioner for Digital Learning, and the Open Educational Resources Grant Program, OER, awards grant payments to eligible institutional faculty employed by a Texas higher education institution to adopt, modify, redesign, or develop one or more courses using only OER. Faculty awardees have been provided $360,000 over 2 grant rounds to implement existing or develop new OER for their courses and provide those materials at no cost to students. Instructional content is openly licensed and is available in the award-winning site, OER Texas, where it can be adopted and modified by faculty from across the state and globally. Since its launch in 2019, the program has saved over $1.3 million for students enrolled in courses impacted by the grant. This example of excellence in digital learning potentially allows for all Texas students to benefit from this particular grant program. The proposed amendments to the rules substitute institutions of higher education as grantees in lieu of individual faculty members. The amendment will remove undue burden of grant administration for faculty by having an institution of higher education serve as the fiscal home of the grant and will facilitate the administration of the grant by THECB staff. The THECB convened a negotiated rulemaking committee comprised of higher education institutional representatives with expertise in OER to propose these amendments. The negotiated rulemaking committee met once on May 12th to develop the rules. The rules were then published to the Texas Register on July 22nd for a 30-day comment period where no comments were received. The recommendation is for adoption.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Singh? Congratulations again. Do I have a motion to adopt the proposed amendment to Board Rules 4.230 through 4.233, 4.236, and 4.237 concerning Open Educational Resources Grant Program.
So moved.
I have a motion by Fred Frias. May I have a second? It's been seconded by Sam Torn. Are there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes.
I'd like to say, Madam Chair, congratulations,
Yeah.
Dr. Singh. Dr. Singh is a product from the Rio Grande Valley, UT Pan American, now UTRGV.
I am
So
indeed.
great great work for you and your team. So thank you
Thank you.
for all y'all are doing.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay, next up is agenda item 503 is consideration and possible action to adopt new board rules, chapter 2, section 2.1 through 2.18 concerning academic planning policy and programs. Elizabeth Mayer and David Troutman, Deputy Commissioner for Academic Affairs and Innovation, will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Good. Okay. Didn't want him to miss out on the fun. Ah. All right. So we brought this last couple of board meetings to you all and talked about the rules. I know Dr. Frias is very interested as well. So what we're going to do is provide an overview of what we've done, and then the last several slides will go over some proposed amendments for you all to consider. So next slide. So you all should have seen this slide before. As we've discussed before beginning the drafting of the proposed rules, we identified key goals that are going to drive the revision of the rules. So the first is really to better align degree and certificate approval processes to Building a Talent Strong Texas, to refresh strategic plan. We also want to align agency rules and procedures more closely with the statute. And in addition, we want to support institutional innovation and maximize transparency. We also want to be able to prioritize meetings on the most significant program approval questions, which I think goes to some of the comments Dr. Frias made earlier. We also want to achieve the policy objective of having a comprehensive catalog of all credentials offered in the state, which gets at one of the goals of Building a Talent Strong Texas as well. And then lastly, this effort is really intended to improve the administration of program review and approval with policies and processes that are feasible, efficient, and flexible. Next slide. So the current program approval rules are in various sections of the Texas Administrative Code right now. The proposed rules establish a new Chapter 2 in which all rules pertaining to program approval and administrative changes will be regardless of the type of the institution. So regardless if you're a community college or university, everything will be in this Chapter 2. Next slide. So I'm now going to go over the most substantive changes that are in the proposed rules. So the first is related to approval endpoints. We went over this, I think, at the last meeting. So notification only. So this approval will be obtained when the institution of higher education successfully submits and receives confirmation of its submission to board staff. There will also be assistant commissioner approval, and this category would be obtained when an institution of higher education requests a new program or administrative request and has met all of the criteria provided in the rule. This would also include bachelor's and master's program if the proposed content contains not greater than 50% new content. The next approval is commissioner level approval, and this category would be obtained when an institution requests a new bachelor's or master's program if the proposed program contains greater than 50% new content. This review will include a staff recommendation about whether the program meets all the criteria for approval. And then the board approval. So this category of approval would be obtained when an institution of higher education requests new doctoral or professional programs, or the new degree program would initiate a required level change from the accreditor. This review would require that the proposal be taken to a board meeting not later than the first anniversary of agency staff determination that the application is administratively complete. This approval will include a recommendation from the commissioner about whether the program meets the criteria for approval. The general criteria and informal notice I'll get to in a minute, and then the intent to plan. So prior to initiating the planning process for a new degree program, an institution proposing a new degree would provide a notification to the coordinating board of its intent to plan prior to seeking approval from its governing board. And this will also require coordinating board staff to provide labor market information once that intent to plan is received. Next slide. So general criteria, I'm not going to spend time on what's in the existing rule. I'm going to spend a little time on what's in the news proposed rule. So this comment. So what will happen now is that we will consider any comments that were received by the agency from other institutions during a 30-day comment period. So not later than the 60th day after the institution submits an administratively complete application for approval, board staff shall provide informal notice and an opportunity for comment to other institutions of higher education in the local community that offer substantially similar programs. Board staff shall provide notification of the applicant institution's request for approval and allow not fewer than 30 days for noticed institution to provide comments to the board staff. So the areas that can be commented on are the state or local need for the proposed program, or evidence of whether the program unnecessarily duplicates programs offered by public, private, or independent institutions in the local community that offer substantially similar programs. The next item is related to cost. So whether the program's cost is reasonable and provides value to students, and that when considering cost of tuition, sources of funding, availability of other similar programs, and the earnings of credentials offered by similar programs in the state. And then last is this alignment with the Talent Strong Texas. So in the existing rules, institutions are still required to show alignment with 60 by 30, but with the new plan, that's why we put it in the news proposed rules. So whether and how the program aligns with the objectives of the refreshed strategic plan. Next slide. So the proposed rules were published for comment in the July 22nd edition of the Texas Register. Board staff then reviewed and prepared responses to comments submitted by institutions, which have been included in your packet for today. Based upon those comments, board staff have included recommended revisions to the rules as published for the board's consideration at adoption. 11 institutions provided comments to the proposed rules for program review and approval. Comments received included 3 submissions from university systems and then 10 submissions from public universities. Next slide. So now I'm going to go over the most significant suggested or proposed amendments based upon the comments that were received. So 6 institutions requested clarification on the term new content, as baccalaureate and master's degrees with less than 50% new content are subject to assistant commissioner approval, and more than 50% new content are subject to commissioner approval. So the coordinated response is that the new content definition is intended to align coordinating board processes with SAC COC processes, which is the accreditor currently for all of the institutions. Similar to the SAC COC process, the determination of new content is made by the institution. Coordinating board staff has clarified this in the amendment to the definition. So you can see we'd add some text there to make that clarification in the proposed amendment. The next comment was related to the public health related institutions. So one institution requested that this definition cross-reference with the definition in the General Appropriations Act, rather than medical or dental unit as defined in the Education Code. The definition of medical and dental unit in the Education Code also encompasses sub-institutional units, including the nursing units of the University of Texas and Texas A&M systems. The institution noted that the coordinating board's intent appears to be to have the rules applied at the level of an institution rather than applying to those sub-institutional units. So our response, we agree with this comment and have developed a proposed amendment intended to align more closely with what the intent was. And you can see that in the proposed amendment there. Next slide. So the next comment was related to the time limit on implementing approved new programs or administrative changes. So one institution noted that the specialized programmatic accreditors may require both coordinating board and institutional accreditor approvals to be complete before they start their approval processes. So for some programs, the institutional accreditation process and the programmatic accreditation process may take more than 2 years. In some circumstances, both may be required before the institution can begin enrolling students. So the institution asked that the coordinating board to consider a process to request a longer time limit for approvals in these circumstances. So the coordinating board, of course, encourages institutions to communicate when they expect subsequent mandatory accreditation cycles to last longer than 2 years, so that coordinating board can issue an approval letter that stipulate a longer time frame. However, in recognition of the fact that institutions cannot always predict with precision how long accreditation cycles may take, the coordinating board also agrees and has amended this rule. And you can see that in the text of the slide.
Elizabeth,
Mhm.
I know there's going to go through a few more, but on that particular one, can you give us an example of the profession?
I don't know offhand, but I think I can check before tomorrow and let you know. But I think it was just a concern that this may be an issue. And so just wanting to.
Some flexibility.
Correct. Correct. Especially when we send the letter so that we know, if we know on the front end, then we can reflect that in the approval letter that we send.
Understand.
Okay. So the next is related to, sorry, BJ, did you switch?
Sorry to take.
No, it's okay.
2.29B.
Yeah, so 2.2 tonight. Yeah, thank you. So several institutions expressed concerns that substantive revisions to existing programs that have previously undergone board approval would need to go back to the board for approval. So our response actually is that this slide is slightly different than we made a slight change yesterday. So this is slightly different than what's in your packet. So this provision was intended to apply to programs receiving board level approval moving forward, not to those programs that had historically been approved by the board. The coordinating board has developed a proposed amendment to address this concern. So the language that we added was also ensuring that doctoral and professional programs, even that had historically been reviewed by the board, that those substantive revisions also come back to you moving forward. Okay, next slide. All right, so more on the revision and modifications to an approved program. So several institutions submitted comments raising objections to including changes to administrative units as a non-substantive change, subject to assistant commissioner approval. So several institutions noted that statute does not give the coordinating board the authority to approve new administrative units. So our response is that the motivation behind this provision was to ensure that coordinating board program inventories contain accurate and up-to-date information about programs, including correctly representing the college or department that houses the program. To maintain the accuracy of the program inventory, staff proposes making this change a notification rather than an approval. So that change is reflected in the amendment. Next slide. So the proposed rule contains a non-exhaustive list of what constitutes substantive or non-substantive revisions and modifications. So institutions asked for greater specificity in defining these two categories. So what we did is during the rule implementation, coordinating board staff intends to provide additional guidance for the submission of program changes. But given the complexity of program development and changes, the most common types of program changes are listed in the proposed rules, but it is not intended to be an exhaustive list. The coordinating board has developed an amendment that draws tighter boundaries on what constitutes a substantive or non-substantive revision, which you can see reflected here. Next slide. So effective dates based upon the proposed rules. So the new rule regarding preliminary planning authority will take effect June 1st of 2023. And for those proposed programs not requiring preliminary planning, the rules apply beginning September 1st of 2023. So for all other rules not related to program approval, the rules will take effect September 1st, 2023. So that concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, but I think that provides an overview of where we are in this current rule process.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. So I met with a prominent university system team who gave input on these rules, including what they said was a 60+ page document with comments. And their two main concerns were that as we change these rules, that the implementation of these rules be more streamlined for the
Correct.
university. So how, I know that's one of your goals here.
Yes.
How are we actually making sure that happens?
So we are looking at all of our forms. So we have over 15 forms right now. So what we're planning to go through in looking at the new rules, revising those, and improving not only the forms, but how they submit that information. Right now, it is a somewhat clunky process. And so we're really not only, so what we're going to do is look at it from the point of in which the institution is going to submit their documentation all the way through the process of what you all see and also the letter that they see. So we're going through this streamlined process. And as we work through those forms, we plan to engage stakeholders as well and make sure that even though we may think this form is perfectly clear, engage those folks to make sure that that is actually going to make sense from their perspective.
So is it safe to assume and also say that you are committed to sharing their desire?
Yes.
To make
Yes.
this a much more
Yes.
streamlined process
Yes.
for the university?
We are not, this whole process was intended to provide transparency and a seamless process. I think there was some concerns that were voiced by some of the institutions in how much is in the rules, but a lot of it was current processes, and we wanted to provide that transparency on the front end. Like right now, you can see those approval endpoints. It states in the rule when that has to be completed. That did not exist before. So we want to continue to partner with the institutions as we move through this implementation process, because this is a pretty significant departure in terms of what we're needing to do in terms of the forms, submission. I've had the opportunity to chat with Dr. Troutman. He's got a lot of expertise in technology solutions and looking at what that might be in the future, because I think there's a lot of opportunity. A lot of our forms have existed for over a decade, I think.
Okay, so it's safe to say that you and the commissioner are guaranteeing this board that, to use your word, you're going to declunkify this.
I love it. Yes, sir.
Okay. Second, one very specific request was in the past, the labor data that shows, whether a job
Yes.
it has been given to the institutions toward the end of the process, and they would very much believe it should be given to them at the beginning of the process.
So as part of the preliminary planning authority, what we would like for them to do is, as soon as they're kind of contemplating a new degree program, they submit that preliminary planning authority or the intent to plan, and then we're going to provide that labor market information. And we're actually working through right now, what are going to be the best data sets and the best sources to provide that data to them, because we want everybody to make sure as they're beginning to plan the program that there's actually a labor market need.
Okay, so that's going to happen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. And final question, if I recall our discussion from the last meeting, and I think Nicole, you chimed in on this as well, was that there was some board concern that, let's say he leaves and takes a job as director of bands at Notre Dame University. Okay. And we get the next guy, we get the next guy in here. We get the next guy in here, and he's not as engaging and as well loved by the masses as this guy. So, and in fact, could be some tension, which has existed before in this position with universities. We talked about the fact that the board, there was so much power being invested in the commissioner that the board didn't have any recourse for rectifying some decisions that could be made that maybe were not made in the best interest of the education of the students in Texas. So where did we land on that?
So, Mr. Torn, I think we had talked through this before, and the way the rules are calibrated and set up in this proposal, the board is delegating specific duties to this Commissioner of Higher Education. But we always have the opportunity to reopen the rules and to change, to remove delegation, to put things back at the board level, and always the opportunity, while this commissioner is here, obviously, to have the open one-on-one conversations with the commissioner or me about, how the approvals are going and whether that should be adjusted right now, with the opportunity to amend the rules if the board becomes uncomfortable that the exercise of delegation is not being executed as intended.
Okay, I didn't remember that's where we landed.
And I think because you report to the board, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Then the chair would have the option to say, we want to redo the rules and not put it back on a commissioner that may or may not want to revisit the rules.
That's correct. We can always, and so it is by another rule that you have delegated to the commissioner to propose rules. So there's also the opportunity to amend that process in rule, to change who proposes rules, and always the opportunity, obviously, to communicate directly from the chair to me about the desire to propose rules that are consistent with the board's delegation and preferences for authority.
Okay.
I did want to weigh in specifically on this issue about the labor market information, because that's a key element of this proposal, but also as Lori Fye discussed earlier, that's a key component of what we're working on with the data modernization initiative. We have a specific strand of work right now that is Dr. Troutman and his team are leading, where we're going to both be looking at what do we see as the current and projected demand for individual credentials, but also thanks to recent commitment from philanthropy, we're going to be able to work in close partnership with the institutions on how they'd like that information presented. So what we found is sometimes even when the information is good, it's presented in ways that are not helpful for the institutions, or not as engaging for the kinds of decisions, say, that like provosts and presidents and chancellors, vice chancellors are trying to make. So we do actually now have a specific strand of work right now to zero in on that question. So I want to make sure, for example, James Hallmark and his team get that information and in a form and in a manner that aligns with how they're trying to make decisions about the kinds of programs that they're advancing.
I have a question real quick. With these new rules enacted, based on today's agenda, which program the commissioner will approve that they don't have to come to the board at all? Yeah, so basically for today's, we have 5 institutions. So all the bachelor, so we will look at only the Angelo and the University of Texas and El Paso. So the 3 of the bachelor degree will be approved by the commissioner.
So Navarro College, I believe this is going to be their first bachelor's program.
One, that was
so they would,
okay.
Yes,
okay.
But the 2 bachelor engineering programs would not.
Yeah, I'm all for that because you are kind of cutting 2 from us, so we don't look at that. But at the same time, I voiced also the concern last time that I understand that you put it on the consent agenda, we'll have the delay. But I thought the rules can also be changed to accommodate that. Like for example, you put all this in consent agenda, those 2 that commissioner kind of approved and put it on consent agenda. The only problem we have is we put it out and delay it, right? That's our problem. But is it the rule set, the current rule set, when we put on the consent agenda, we already make decision. If we put it out and we say we table it, or it's very rare. I don't believe that will happen. But if it happened, okay, out of the blue moon, if it happened, and we already make decisions, so the current rule doesn't apply. It's illegally because we already make decision that we're going to table that program, so it won't delay that 1 year. They won't trigger the automatic denial because that's what we worry about, right? Is when we put it on if we delay that making decision, there will be an automatic denial. But if we already make decision, tabling it or deny it or approve it or whatever that may be, they already satisfy the current rule, then it won't be an automatic denial. It will be a continuing process of letting the board approve. What I'm trying to say is, I think putting on the consent agenda, if we can make it, I'm not pushing for that. I mean, if we don't need to look at that, I don't mind. I mean, I trust you guys, but if we can put it on the consent agenda, I think that will be a better governance in terms of this board, because you already look at it, you look at that, and the commission approve it, and we consent it, and it's done. But the only tricky part is just like you said, when somebody pull it out and we delay the process. But I think when you put it on the agenda, you pull that out, you already make a decision, whatever decision that may be. The worst decision is to table it. That means you worry about triggering the current rule of delaying it so that it will trigger the automatic denial. But I don't think that is the case at all. So I'm just asking a question. I don't know, but I think it's worthwhile to be able to put it on the consent agenda for these 2 days. We have 3 for the board to approve, 2 on the consent. That will be just go forward, and then it will be an easy process if it can be done. So I'm asking the question. Am I clear?
Well, first of all, we get the list in advance, right, of all the programs that have been approved by the staff and the commissioner. So you have a chance to review all those, right? So, I mean, if you have a question, you can question and pull it before, but I'm not so sure I follow your thought process, but Commissioner, you have
just a couple of points, but I defer to council. So just one issue that we were trying to navigate is that the default would be for approval, not for denial. So if we miss the 1 year deadline, then the program isn't automatically denied. The program is automatically approved, and that's not in rule. That's a statutory restriction that we found ourselves up against. The other thing to build on the chairman's point is that, and I think there's an important caveat in kind of how the approvals work and what can come to the board, because any program could technically come to the board. So if there's so as we're looking at, here's the list of programs. So we'll have an idea. Here's what's in the pipeline. Here's what people are planning. Here's what they brought up. Well, here's where we have non-substantive changes. Here's where we have more substantive changes. So if the assistant commissioner, even on a non-substantive change, was going to recommend denial, that actually cascades to the commissioner. And then if the commissioner could recommend any program to come to the full board. And then the board is also going to have this transparency about what's in the pipeline. So if there's a program that it could be for good reasons. It could be that there's a program because it's an innovative program and the board wants to spotlight a program, or it could be something that would be more controversial that the board would want to weigh in on. So any program under the proposed rules can come to the board. So it's not, so it doesn't limit the ability of the programs to come up for deliberation. The idea is really to, try to streamline, especially where we have we've had these more routine programs come through where you don't have additional faculty, you don't have additional costs. Really, it's you're sort of adding another program sort of into the offerings of an institution. To be able to sort of streamline those programs so that the deliberations of the board would be focused more on more strategic kinds of questions, if that makes sense. But we're not precluding any program from being able to come up for a full board.
No, I fully understood that. I'm saying like today's program, today's agenda, just so we'll have 3 to discuss, and then we have 2 for a consent agenda. So I don't see that's a big problem.
So I would just say from the legal perspective, I think the challenge is you can do that, but I think we would have to have submission windows So right now, for example, because the statute doesn't say just 1 year, it says by the first anniversary, it's automatically approved. So for example, if we, staff received a proposal on April 1st, that would need to be on the board agenda, both at the January meeting potentially, and then also at the October board meeting. So essentially you would truncate the entire process, would have to go from April 1 to the October 1 in order to get it on the October board agenda, so that if for some reason somebody wanted to pull it off of consent, that it could also then make it to the January board meeting. And so I just think logistically, is this possible? It is possible. I do think if that is the direction that the board wants to move, we do need to pull back the rules.
No, my
and
question
redo
is,
them.
we are doing it right now, right? So we are not changing anything. I don't understand what you're trying to say. If we don't do the consent, then we'll be delaying them. We are doing it right now. We are putting it on today's agenda.
Mhm.
So the staff already have plenty of time to work out everything so that we can put it on the agenda today, those 5 programs.
But if you pull, yes, but if you pull off one of them today, and that one was submitted prior to like April 1st.
I understand,
Or
1
after
year
April 1st, right?
anniversary.
Yeah. So I just think it's a challenge.
But-
Like
but
we
what-
can rewrite it, but to ensure 100% it works without automatic approvals, I do think we would have to create submission windows so that you give the staff enough time to handle those on the front end. Because if you get down to, pushing it below 6 months, I think it just becomes challenging because of the number. But I mean, of course, Dr. Wong, you're not wrong that like anything is possible. We would just, I think to do this prudently, we would have to rework the rules. And I think we would probably need to pull the rules back to do that.
I think what he's asking, and tell me if I missed the point. The 3 institutions the 3 programs that we're looking at today, you want to move those to the consent agenda today?
No, those 2 that with the new rules, commissioner will approve it. You won't even see it on the agenda, right? With the new rules. Those two school, University of Texas Permanent Basin, Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Science, 2 Bachelor of Science degree will not come to this board at all with the new rules. You won't see it. So I'm good with that. I mean, if the board feel like, you won't say, what I'm saying, is that right?
The bachelor's programs, chemistry or
No, what I'm saying is if we can put it on the consent agenda, the board will see it and approve it. We're not going to discuss it. We're not going to, but that's our fiduciary duty to follow what you guys been doing. I mean, you guys been approving those bachelor degree. And now we are going to allow the commission to approve it without even seeing it. That's a very good, very efficient way of doing things. But at the same time, if you can bring it students to the board for consent, so it won't, as long as it won't delay the whole process. I don't want to delay the approval. I don't want any automatic trigger. But what I'm saying is so simple way of putting it on the consent agenda. The only problem I think is that legally right now is if somebody doesn't really like it and put it out, and there's no decision made, so you will trigger the automatic approval. Automatic approval. But isn't it happening now the same way? Like today, if we don't we don't make any decision on anything, I still don't understand. Like today, what was the problem of changing it now? Because today we have those 5 programs. So we add on that. What happened, under what circumstances the automatic triggering will happen? If we don't approve it, then that disapproval, that's still action, no? If we deny it.
Yeah, that's correct. If you
deny it.
No, if you deny it, then it will not be approved.
Right. So
if you don't do anything, if you were postponed, I don't know the submissions of those, but very likely those would be approved automatically if you don't deny them today.
Right. We don't deny, but under what circumstances those rules will trigger that when anniversary rule of automatic approval is what do we do to trigger that? I
If
still don't
you
understand.
table those
Oh, we table.
today,
Mhm.
postpone, I'm sorry, if you, table's not the right word.
Table.
If you postpone those to the next meeting, those will be automatically approved in all likelihood because they will exceed the 1 year.
So that's
I don't know the submission
Yes,
dates of
yes,
these
yes.
specific ones, but
that's exactly
what would
my
yes,
the question is if we table it
if you postpone.
instead of postpone it.
Yeah.
Is table is a postponement?
No, I'm sorry, table's the wrong word. It's postpone. So if you postpone to the next board meeting, those will be automatically approved. So the only way to stop those from being approved today is to deny them on a vote.
So like these 5 institutions, if we table any of those, that will be trigger automatic.
I believe so
Yeah,
because
okay.
I didn't.
So it's
check
happening the
yes.
same. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to get clear.
Yeah, the statute is just super prescriptive in a way that makes it hard based on the volume to get them all through.
So I want the board member to understand, we don't want to put those 2 on the consent agenda because if we table any of those, it will trigger automatic approval. That's the whole reason the staff is kind of like saying, don't put on the consent agenda, let the commission approve it. That's it done. In case, but what I'm trying to also argue is how often that could happen if they put it on the consent agenda, that somebody will, they require a board action to delay it, that means to table it. I mean, if we put on consent agenda, somebody put it out, after discussion, we approve it, that's done. It's still done, right? So it's okay. It won't happen. It won't worry about that anniversary triggering day. The whole thing is anniversary triggering day. If we don't add on anything, somehow it's automatically approved. But what I'm saying is that there's a trade-off. So if we put on the consent agenda, at least Sam will see those 2 institutions today that is approved. If we don't put on consent, you won't see it on today's agenda. But basically, that's what. I'm just asking question, okay?
Yeah.
I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but I just want the board member to realize we are approving that new rules. We won't see those 2 institutions on the agenda at all. If so be it, if that we all feel like that's comfortable. Well, yeah.
So one clarification though is that I would say there's an important distinction between sort of the process for board approval and then what the board sees. And so the board and you could be more prescriptive, like to me and to the team in implementation, for example, like, so we're going to have a much better sense of what's in the pipeline because we'll have these notifications from the institutions of what they're planning. And of course, we'll reflect labor market information back to them. So then they can make a determination about whether they want to go ahead with a proposal. We'll have different processes depending on the complexity of those proposals. So the really routine stuff, we're changing the name of the program, that kind of thing, that's fast tracked, but on a timeline that's specified. So where the institutions know if they send this up, they have to get a response back from the coordinating board on a quick timeline. And then even for more substantive changes, and the institutions have a better idea about when those are going to come up. Right now, the vast majority of bachelor's programs don't come up for full board consideration, just the engineering programs or where there's a level change. So like with Navarro College, bringing their first bachelor's program comes up. But we will have we will have the ability to, and I would actually recommend to the board that we provide regular updates about here's all of the programs that are in various stages of the process, so that any board member and information is available now. I know Dr. Frias will call about particular programs.
They give me a report every week.
One additional background, but where any board member about any program, even if it's a fairly routine request, would have that ability to bring that up. And we do, under the proposed rules, also have the ability to have any program come up for full board consideration if that's what the board would like to do. So it's the focus is not, it's not as much on trying to invest more power in the commissioner. It's more to provide more predictability and transparency about here's what the process is and when those responses have to come back to the institutions, and where we have sort of a better sense of here's the bigger picture of what's in the pipeline along the way. But again, I think an important distinction between what the specific approval process is and then what is visible to the board. And, again, I would recommend that the board charge the commissioner to keep the board apprised of all of the programs at all of the different phases, which, we do send a lot of information up now, but we can, under the new rules, I think, provide a more comprehensive view.
Just to underscore this, I think the engineering programs right now, if they have been taking a year, if they're a bachelor program, under the new rule, they would be expected to take only 9 months because the commissioner only has 9 months to make that decision pursuant to the rule. Otherwise, it would come on up to the board.
I understand.
Yeah.
So basically, the staff that putting on the consent agenda is not a good, not a good way. I accept that because,
I think
you feel like just take today. I mean, I know some program, I don't even want to see it. But just take today. Today we have opportunity to approve those. Okay. Now, after new rules, the board, you don't see those two issues. Yeah, of course, you can ask commissioner, they will give you all the information. I don't deny it, but what I'm saying is the board, we have the duty to approve, has been approving it. Now they said those two, you won't see it, but you can ask everybody. I'm good with that, but just saying putting on the consent agenda is not a good way. If the staff really truly feel like that, I accept it. I will take it.
If we didn't have
I don't have any problem with that.
There were no
bad idea. It's a bad idea putting on the consent agenda because it's a lot of uncertainty. Even you put it on the consent agenda, still uncertainty that something may happen. Then it will trigger the automatic approval. So that's not a good idea. So if the staff feels very strongly about that, I will accept it.
Madam Chairman, I call for the question.
That means stop.
Do we have a question?
Yeah, that means you call for the motion.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, any other discussions? No. Do I have a motion to recommend the adoption of the new board rules, chapter 2, sections 2.1 through 2.184 concerning academic planning, policy, and programs? May I have a motion?
So move.
I have a motion, Daniel Wong. May I have a second?
A second from Emma.
And I have a second by Emma Schwartz. Any other discussion? No. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 6 is adjournment. There is no further discussion. May I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Sam Torn, seconded by Daniel Wong. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We'll now take a short break to allow the staff to set up for the agency operations